Chasing Safety. That was your introduction to Underoath, the world's introduction to Underoath as it would really come to be known, you know, what you would call a quote unquote classic lineup of a band. And this gets into actually something that I think is worth discussing for a second. There are so many bands where there is a particular lineup that is the one that is known. And in my mind, a lot of times those earlier incarnations really only are celebrated at all and sort of continue to be known because of the work of the later incarnation. And there's something about the often lazy way that facts are assembled, like on a Wikipedia page, when it's, you know, this happened and then this happened and then this happened and this happened. People coming in and out of bands seems more significant than like 4 years spent on tour, you know? So I feel like it gives people a really skewed perception of what lineup changes really mean in a band. Whereas, you know, if you think about, say, Metallica, my favorite band of all time, you know, there was Ron McGovney on bass. There was, you know, a couple different guys that played the lead on their first song on a compilation. There was Dave Mustaine was in the band for a while. Obviously, Cliff Burton's on the first 3 records. But when you think about Metallica, like, you have a pretty clear image of more or less the same lineup or lineup.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so it's just interesting that, you know, obviously there was an Underoath that existed before the one that we all know, and it's not to discredit that version or any of those people that were in it, but I don't know. I feel, you know, there's a lot of it. There's Throwdown, Dillinger Escape Plan, Zayo. There's so many bands that I think we could throw in here. It's certainly not just Underoath.
Right.
Like you wouldn't even necessarily know or remember those early versions if the newer version we all love didn't, you know what I mean? Like carry that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So getting in the time machine, you're recruited into this band Underoath. You're going to make a record together.
We toured for a while first, which is another common misconception about that. Is there's 2 really big misconceptions about Not Only Chasing Safety. Be it that I'm the lead singer, it's always like it's my first record. But what gets brushed under the rug is it's half the band's first record.
Right.
Myself,
yes,
James Smith, and Grant Brandell, none of those people were a part of the record before. Mm-hmm. And it always gets put as Spencer Chamberlain's first record with the band, but it was a complete. There's 6 members in Underoath for anyone who doesn't know. It was 3 new members came in. Yeah. And we in some of those at different times over the touring cycle before, and we toured for, you know, we did a couple of tours before that record came out. We were touring nonstop, and I mean, I was in a band that was on Facebook. Jesus, man. You're like going nuts. Look at that guy.
Just trying to get on camera, you know?
Dude.
Little cameo. Cameo.
So, I was on a band on Face Down, which was like a hardcore, metalcore type record label at the time, and we were based out of Tampa Bay as well. Even though I'm not originally from here, I had moved down here right after high school. I came, and because we were touring and stuff, and as soon as we finished, our guitar player, his family, and this was with my older brother and his friends. I was a singer, and his family lived here, even though they lived in North Carolina, where I was from, until he graduated, when he was older. So then they moved back to Florida. And I was still in North Carolina for a while. And then we all picked up and moved down here because his father had a drywall company. And that meant we could tour, come back, and not lose our asses trying to, you know, because it was hard when you first started touring back then. You know, you had to, before the internet was the way, you know, like you had to tour and play music and impress people, and you wouldn't get paid a lot of money, and you know, you couldn't just survive. Like you couldn't just quit a job get a job for 2 weeks and quit it. So we moved to Florida because we could come home and literally work the next day. Mm-hmm. It sucked. Had to wake up at 6 a.m. and go do drywall. Like it was awful. But it allowed me to live my dream, and and I thought that was it. I thought this is what I was going to do. Like I get to do what I love, and then come home and I can still make some money. And we played some shows with Underoath, and it just kind of pulled me aside, and wanted me to be the singer. And I said no twice first before I did it. And not because I thought I was better than them. I thought it was a great opportunity, and it was honestly because I was in a band with my own blood. My brother was the drummer, and this is another story that a lot of people don't know. Is I remember we went out to lunch, and he sat me down and he goes, "I'm going to move back to North Carolina, and I think you should stay, and I think you should join Underoath."
Wow.
He's like you're the best at what you do, and his life, he wanted to do something else. And Phil, was in a lot of bands after, but I just think Florida wasn't for him at the time. He actually lives here now and has a wife and a kid here. Loves Florida probably more than I do.
But we're talking like almost 20 years ago right now. So yeah.
Well, not really, but yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah.
And he, if it wasn't for him going like, yo, you definitely should do this. And I was like, are you sure? Because at first it was just going to fill in, they had a show or two, they didn't know what they were going to do. And I think after the first practice, it wasn't ever really talked about. It was just like, this is what you're going to do, Yeah, we toured. I think we wrote in the first practice too, if I recall correctly. We were learning old songs for me, and then we wrote a song or two in the first practice.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think gets overlooked as well, especially as bands become older and more established and have a deeper catalog, that in this particular scene that the band originated in, and certainly the mindset at that time, it's constant forward motion. It wasn't a thought of like, okay, we've got these records and this is our band. It was always just like, what's next? What's the next thing? So
yeah,
I think a lot of people might be surprised to hear that you wrote new material your very first practice, but knowing kind of the mentality of the era, especially, it's not a surprise at all. In fact, it'd be kind of a surprise if you didn't.
Yeah. And like, dude, when we were touring, we were still playing for nobody,
right?
Like it was like, it was really, there was a lot of shows that were really shitty. Like no one came, like it wasn't like, it wasn't overnight. We toured for a while, the six of us, before we went Maid Chasing Safety, and then we went on tour immediately as direct support to Norma Jean, who was crushing at the time, because Bless the Martyr was like just everything for anyone in that scene. And we were direct support on that tour. And then I remember me and Aaron flying back to finish some stuff on Chasing Safety. And at the end of the tour, we stayed to mix. Some people stayed to hear some of the mix, and then it came out after that. And it came out, we were on Warped Tour. And that Warped Tour, we were, no forklifts. We weren't on the blow up sign. We were on, at that time, Smart Punk stage was in the festival grounds, but for some reason, Kevin wouldn't put it on the blow up sign. I remember we had to fight to get, like, our management had to fight for us to have catering on the tour. They weren't even going to give it to us. And then we had to push our gear from wherever they parked our ride at, through the mud, through the rocks, through the rain, whatever, ourselves, no help, no matter if it was on a mile away or not. And then we would hit the line with a picture of Chasing Safety photograph, like the photograph on the back, I think, of us. And it said new record coming out, whatever day. And on the back, we would write Smart Punk stage at whatever the time was. And we'd pass it out to everyone in the line. Everyone in the band had to do it. And then you could go back to sleep and then wake up and play. But we did it every day. And I swear to God, half the people would take it and fucking throw it on the ground. You know what I mean? Like, they look at you and like, and then that it came out on that tour. And I mean, we were hustling like super hard, and people were showing up, and then word of mouth was spreading that it said that you should watch. And I mean, we even caused a riot in Atlanta, Georgia. They put us on this little makeshift stage, and it had like wooden barricades. And we tried to tell them, like, this isn't going to work. Atlanta was actually the place that we did well already because we were from the South. In the Solid State, the Norma Jean support show had gone off really well, and because that's where Norma Jean was from. And we were like, Atlanta's kind of like our second home. Like, this is going to be crazy. And it was like down this like hallway where the concessions were, the bathrooms, in this little stage. And believe it or not, everyone showed up, and it like pushed it, and the barricade fell. People were getting hurt. The security guards were turning our amps off. We ended up in handcuffs, and that's how we met Kevin Lyman. You know, it was like that's how he heard of us. And I think the next year we were on a legit stage. It wasn't main stage yet, but it was like the one tick below, you know. And then the year after that, we were a main stage band, you know. But pretty wild. I remember
incredible.
That.
I remember that Smart Punk stage thing of some other bands as well that were, especially the stories of pushing your gear all the way across like rocks.
It was us and the Bled and the Matches and 18 Visions. There's another band on there that I thought was pretty cool, and they didn't end up sticking around too long. Fuck, what was the name of that band? I don't know. They kind of had like a Glassjaw vibe, but I can't really remember. The singer went off and sang for Chiodos for a minute at one point.
Oh,
what was the name of that band?
I know the band you're talking about now too.
They were really good.
Because the singer was Brandon
something, yeah.
I'll look it up.
They were on that stage as well.
Yeah, I remember the band.
Yep, and the kid who's in Sleeping with Sirens, Nick Martin, was in a band before drugs. Undermined it. And
on Kung Fu Records.
Yeah, and their deal was they had to set up and tear down the stage. Like, they had to help build it. And I remember them, they were on that, and that's when we met Nick. And, you know, I hear from him every once in a while still to this day. You know, he's
a great dude. Yeah, I met him back then. It's a little convoluted, but my ex, who I have 2 kids with, and we're still, you know, we've been split up for about 5 years, but we're friendly and everything. Her brother-in-law is Joe Escalante, who owns Kung Fu Records and plays bass in the Vandals and whatnot. So around the time that Undermine was signed to Kung Fu, I was around that a lot, the Kung Fu bands and stuff like that. And then, it was awesome years later when, it's funny you mentioned Chiodos, because I think I then met Nick on the Chiodos tour bus at Warped Tour again, like years later. He was, I don't remember what he was doing with them, but he was with them like the last year, like the last big year that Chiodos played. And then of course, then he ended up in Sleeping, and great dude. Yeah,
he's a cool dude. He's a really nice guy. Wild little memory lane there, but
the winding pathway.
I remember the Bled would play right before, even though it was supposed to be random, it would always go to the Bled, then Underoath, and it would crush. It would literally and that's where we met those dudes, and we ended up taking them out on a small run at some point shortly after Warped Tour. And we stayed close with the Bled for a long time, and they went on to release some sick fucking albums. That band was so cool.
And it was right in that same moment where Underoath was blowing up, was right around the time that they were hitting their stride.
Yeah.
And everything too.